means Science and Technology Study. Why we need to study STS? Because technology, knowledge, and science are fundamental in modern contemporary society. The understanding of how social, cultural, and material elements influence the productions of new practices, new ways of living, new understanding, and new institutions is vital in our understanding of contemporary postmodern society. The studies of technology and science provide students with insight into how different processes of knowledge are initiated and progress, and how innovative technological processes are developed, employed, or increased in importance.
During pre-colonial, women shared equal footing with the men in the society. In fact, it could be said that the Philippines in pre-colonial was largely matriarchal, with the opinions of women holding great weights in the matters of religion and politics. They also headed the rituals as a babaylan. For the men, they wearing short sleeve with collarless jacket whose length reached slightly below the waist. The red color is for the chief, and the black or the blue is for the people below him. And for the lower part, they use bahag. Next is putong. It served as a headgear. A red putong means that the wearer had killed at least 7 in a war. And also kalumbiga. This is kind of accessories made of gold and the precious stone. For the women, they wearing garment sleeve jacket, also known as baro, for their skirt, such as saya and padadyong, and also wrap strip clothes, also known as tapis. In terms of agriculture, this was the main means of livelihood. Grew abundance of banana, rice, sugarcane, cotton hemp, coconut, and many more using of kainin system. The other industries are fishing, mining, lumbering, poultry raising, shipbuilding, and weaving that use barter system in business transaction because there were no currency. In terms of God, Bathala was the supreme god of pre-Spanish Filipino, and it is also has Anitos and Diwatas, which are the counterpart of the modern saints, whom Filipinos are offer foods and prayer. Let's move to the Spanish era. Elegant and luxurious clothing and accoutrements worn by upper and middle classes reflects prosperity. Adapting features of both European and indigenous clothing, elite fashion evolved to metropolitan style. Piña and the other luxurious fabrication in 19th century, Las Islas Filipinas were internationally renowned for their production of garments made of piña. And lastly, the language. Tagalog has a Spanish influence. The Filipino vocabulary came from the Spanish language and was only changed by the spelling over time.
Metal Age. The ancient Filipino settled besides bodies of water, hunting and food gathering become supplementary activities as our reliance on them was reduced by fishing and cultivations of a soil. From the hinterland, coastals, and riverine communities, the people evolved an essentially homogeneous culture. A basically common way of life for nature and the primary factors. At this time, and societies in Europe began consciously to produce metals. Simultaneous with these technological innovations were changes in settlement organizations and ritual life and the interactions between the different societies in Europe. American period, religion, Protestantism, free trade relations that the American imposed to the country. Filipino during American invasions also adopted the American fashion statement using hats, long sleeve coat and long sleeve polo inside it with the matching neckties for men. Modern Filipinos are emotional and passionate about life and a way of that seems more Latin than Asians. The family is the basic and the most important aspects of Filipino culture. Divorce is prohibited and annulment are rare. The family is the safety net for the individuals, especially older people, during difficult economic times. Children will often stay with their parents into adulthood. Only living when they get married. Political and business ties are often influenced by the family relationships. Two traits that many foreign visitors often have a difficult time understanding are pakikisama and utang na loob. Pakikisama really means getting along and requires individuals overlook slight improprieties or indiscretions for the sake of preserving peace within the family, personal or business relationship. Utang na loob customs of paying back one favor with another. These traits emphasize that important that Filipino people place on maintaining pleasant interpersonal relationship and putting the needs of the group ahead of individuals.
American period. After Spanish era, a Board of Health was established in 1898 under General BSBA. In 1901, the Board of Health was established in the Philippines. They were responsible for legislation over public health. World War II. They captured a delegation of American and Filipino hospitals, schools, and facilities of health. Some schools like UST were made to intimidate tents or camps housing the nurses for Japanese soldiers. Some of the nurses are raped and killed by the Japanese. Modern age. In present time, herbal medicine is never forgotten, even though we have hospitals. One of the examples in biotech is a confirmatory test for dengue.
Medicine in Philippines, pre-Hispanic. In this time, babaylans are widely known because they are believed to be a woman who had been possessed by a spirit. They use herbal and massage therapy as a tool from the gods to help the sick people. Albularyo's are from the word herbulario or herbalist. These people use the art of healing through herbal. Ancient herbal practice is seen all throughout Asia.
Pre-Hispanic of rituals. The age of animism in our archipelago is an interesting subject that provides us clues as how Filipinos manage to build their spirituality and the countless rituals they observe. Some of the rituals and practices performed by early Filipinos which shows us how simple activities like farming and fishing were intertwined with the oldest belief of our ancestors and continue to flow from the consciousness of one generation to the next. Metal Age. The ritual were based on beliefs in a ranking deity whom they called Batalang Mikapal, and the host of other deities, in the environmental spirits and soul spirits. The early Filipinos adored the sun, the moon, the animals, and the birds, for they seemed to consider the object of nature as something to be respected. Present and modern. Most of the indigenous people of Cordillera Mountains have traded their traditional loincloths and wraps for jeans, polo shirts, and rubber slides, and many have converted to Catholicism or evangelical Christianity. But when a loved one or member of the kin group dies, they often turn to rituals handed down their ancestors. The death rituals are meant to ensure that the spirits of the deceased receive the attention and care required.
Pre-Hispanic Asian time, the age of animism in our archipelago is an interesting subject that provides us clue as to how Filipino managed to build their spirituality and countless rituals they observe. Some of rituals and practices performed by early Filipinos which show us how simple activities like farming and fishing were intertwined with the oldest beliefs of our ancestors and continue to flow from the consciousness of one generation to the next. And also, present and modern. Most of the indigenous people of Cordillera Mountains have traded their traditional loincloth and wrap for jeans, polo shirt, and rubber slides, and many have converted to Catholicism or evangelical Christianity. But when a loved one or member of their kind group dies, they often turn to rituals handed down from their ancestors. The death rituals are meant to ensure that the spirits of deceased receive the attention and care they require.
Our topic is all about pre-Hispanic period to modern and science technology in terms of beliefs. In pre-Hispanic period, the belief of Filipinos consisted of phenomenon of gods, spirits, creature, and men that guarded stream, fields, trees, mountains, forests, and houses. But Hala, who created earth and man, was superior to these other gods and spirits.
The Metal Age is more on bronze or brass tools that is used by the past Filipinos in the year around 500 BC. And their belief is more on worshipping on their god that they are only made.
In Spaniard period, it is more on changes on the beliefs of the Filipino from the past, from anito to gods. By how? By means of teaching or influencing us to worship their god and to forget the old beliefs of the Filipino in the past.
The American period are the large influencer in terms of beliefs and culture, like giving us a free education to have one of us a sustainable knowledge. And in upgrading those machineries, building houses, and different technology by our past conqueror.
In World War II, there are only few changes in our beliefs and culture. Why? Because this period is very short than other periods, and some artifacts and evidence are destroyed by the war. In beliefs, this period taught us to be brave and defend ourselves and our loved ones to save our lives.
Many changes in every period, but this is the best period in terms of technology because many technologies are advanced and higher tech than before. In beliefs, like technology, it's more upgraded than before. Like in classes, we are now conducting online class, not face-to-face classes due to the pandemic and high technology.
For the Philippines to become a stable discussions and well-governed nation, the country must become more environmentally resilient and better able to cope with the impact of natural disasters and the cover quickly. Natural resources play a critical role in the Philippine economy, as agriculture, fisheries, and forestry represent about 10% of gross domestic product and account for almost 30% of employment. Equally important, the natural capital provides energy, water, flood control, storm mitigation, and other environmental services that benefit the entire country, including
As one of the fastest growing countries in Asia, the Philippines faces environmental challenges with proportionate impacts to the poor and women. Ineffective management seriously degrades the country's significant biodiversity resources. Water and air pollution levels exceed generally accepted healthy standards. Greenhouse gas emissions are increasing from the transport and power sectors. That's why the country is ranked as one of the world's most vulnerable to the impacts of environmental disasters.
Everyone, for today's video, we are talking about tools and materials that created or invented in prehistoric times. In prehistoric times, there was a prehistoric humans that invented stone knives and mud hat, and they also created tools and shelter made from found materials. And now, the world is
and specialized tools that are mass-produced to extremely close standards and the variety of structures in uncountable and also rocks and stone still began. And do you know, guys, that the age stone is start from 900 BC to 5000 BC, rock ruled to Neolithic construction. This was the final period before woodworking began. Hope you like it, guys.
I'm John Christopher Naval, and our topics are tools and materials. Copper and bronze age was discovered about 5000 BCE, while bronze was developed around 3100 BCE. Metals made tools even more durable because the edges could cut better. Walk like an Egyptian around 2650 to 2600 BCE. The first true architect or engineer was active in Egypt. One of those responsible for building without the use of power, tools, and construction equipment as we know.
Indigenous form of communication was already in existence, evidenced by writing on barks and bamboos. News were also announced by an umalokohan or sound creator. Literature was already developing. Forms include sabi, maxim, bugtong, riddle, larangan, epic poetry, kumintang, war songs, and also hudhud wedding song. The second is Spanish era. Spanish era was the official language of the Philippines in over 3 centuries. From the beginning of Spanish rule in the late 16th century until 1898, when the islands were ceded to the United States, Spanish removed co-official along with English until 1987. It was at first removed in 1970 by a constitutional change, but after 18 months, it was designated an official language by presidential decree and remained official until 1987, with the present constitution designating of instead as an optional and voluntary language.
Topic is all about the communication through the Middle Age and American period. The age where the Filipinos had a culture that was basically Malayan in structure and form. They had language that traced their origin to the Australasian parents' country and used them not only as daily communication but also as vehicles for the expression of their literary needs. American period, this was the age of modern media characterized by the production of newspapers, film in 1920 and radio broadcasting in 1922. Folk media in the form of sarsuela and the use of kalinhaga or symbolism also marked the American shoulder and the shoulder's letter were the first English language newspaper in the Philippines, published by enlisted men of the 18th Minnesota Volunteers in the U.S. Army during the Philippine-American War of 1898. It advertised the imported products of one of Mayor Brown, the newspaper company.
Having been in the person with sophisticated mobile system. The Roman Empire to travel. Colonized much of the known world. The Central and others increasingly expanded. Trade culture exchange over vast areas of the globe.
Transportation and infrastructure have been around
since the beginning of human. In fact, the history of people and civilization could be pulled in terms of mobility. Mobility allowed our species to move out of Africa and around the world in roughly, so 500 years early. Component included walking on animal trails and along waterways, increasingly large and sophisticated floating craft, and animals domesticated to increase transport over larger and larger expanses. In the current situation, the mobility ecosystem is the complex, if it is anything most varied across the world.
Let's start with pre-Hispanic period. In ancient time of the Philippines, children were given the rudiments of education. In ancient time, the father trained his son to become warrior or hunters. The part of mother trained her daughter in cooking, gardening, and household arts. Spanish period. Formal education was brought in the Philippines by Spaniards. In short, Spaniards teach young Filipinos about Spaniards' culture, language, as well as Christianity or religion.
American period. The U.S. has a different approach. The American principal goal in coming to the Philippines is to educate and to train the science of self-government. World War II. After the World War II in 1947, the virtue of Executive Order Number 94, the Department of Instruction was changed into Department of Education. During this period, the regulation and supervision of private and public schools belong to the Bureau of Public and Private School. Nowadays, today's education has been changed. Education in the Philippines offered through formal and non-formal system. Formal education typically spans 14 years. 6 years in primary school education or known as elementary level, 4 years in secondary education or high school level, and 4 years in higher education that leads to bachelor's degree or known as the college level. So again, this is the evolution of education in the